I'm a bit late to doing this review because I had school, but last week the full season of Echo just dropped, so here are my thoughts on it. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I talk about a bunch of movies on this channel. If you're new here, down below in the comment section, share what you thought of Echo, the latest MCU Disney Plus show. Over on my channel, I have more content like this. Check those out once this video is over. If you enjoy this video, click that like button and be sure to subscribe because it really does help a lot. And, down below, just let me know what you think of the MCU in general as well. Is it going really good for you as it did in its glory days with the Infinity Saga? Or are you kind of like me, where you're kind of burnt out on the MCU and you don't like as many projects as you think you probably should with this franchise? I'd love to hear all that down below. And with that said, let's just get straight into it with the good. And I think the best thing about this show is that it has a new and different tone for the MCU. The MCU is a franchise that I grew up with ever since 2016 when I was 6 years old, and I've grown up with it. Still have seen all of the live action movies and shows that they have put out, and it's kind of a new and different MCU tone in this one. It doesn't feel like a standard MCU template or anything like that. It actually has a different tone, kind of like the Marvel Netflix shows with Daredevil, Iron Fist, Punisher, the Defenders, Jessica Jones, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of darker like those shows, and that feels new and different for a Disney direction with the MCU canon. And so I think it's the best thing about the show is that it doesn't feel like the rest of the MCU. It tried doing something different. And so, naturally, that's the thing that stood out to me about this one. Also, I think the characters and the world build that they do in this show is very fleshed out very well. Like, you feel like all the characters have a deep history with one another in this town, in the family bloodline. They just feel like they have a long history and knowledge towards one another, and they just feel more developed than a bunch of other things, a bunch of other characters and families we've gotten in the MCU. They feel like they've known each other for a long time. They know what makes each other tick. They know very well how they will respond to situations, and they understand their family really well. Because this show is basically essentially about Maya Lopez, Echo, from Hawkeye, returning to her hometown to seek, not seek revenge, I would say, but to take care of the people who work for Kingpin, who she thought she killed in Hawkeye. And I think because it's set in this setting with the family, it feels a more developed than a bunch of the other shows that we've gotten. Feels very much more straightforward, and there's also some really cool action when it comes to, like, in the very first episode, you get a fight with Daredevil, and then there's some cool, nicely done action throughout the rest of it. Like, you actually have bloody splatters and violence in this show because it is TVMA for the MCU. And so, I enjoyed a lot of the action in this show. All that said, there's a lot to talk about here with the bad, so let's move on to the bad. And unfortunately, I really, really wanted to enjoy this show. This was the first time the MCU has ever gone TVMA, and I guess you could kind of feel that in this show, but I went into this show a little bit skeptical as well. And the simple reason for that is I was never asking for an Echo TV show. I was never asking for Echo to have her own show. And so, when it inherently, the problem with that is that while the characters do feel developed, I didn't really care about the characters or the family dynamics. So certainly in the positives, they feel like they have a long history, but that doesn't mean I actually care about them. Echo inherently is kind of a dull character. She's a deaf person and doesn't have much personality to work with because of that. She doesn't. I couldn't describe to you Echo's personality if you had asked me that, and so she's kind of a hard person to connect with. But even her family, they kind of make it such a big deal that she has connections to them, and that feels like it kind of goes in the back burner. It makes it feel like a big deal, but it feels like it's like in the background of all this stuff. And the inherent problem with an Echo TV show is that you have to make this character that didn't really appear much in Hawkeye more interesting in this show. And I didn't feel like this show made her more interesting. It didn't really make me care about Echo, and so I think that was the inherent problem of this show in the first place. Also, when you're talking about our returning characters from the Marvel Netflix series, you get Kingpin, which it's nice to see him again, but I think that he doesn't really feel as much of a true threat in this show. In which case, he appears for literally, basically only 2 episodes in the show. He doesn't really do much. I don't think there's a single action sequence that he actually participates in this entire show. And he just didn't really feel like a threat to me. And I'm not really sure why, but he's just this character that's monologuing all the time in this show to Echo. And maybe that's how he always was, but I like, at the end of Hawkeye, he was in like this action sequence where he felt like this big gigantic threat. Here, he's just monologuing in every single scene that he is put in. And so he doesn't really feel like a true threat. And when it also comes to our other returning character, Daredevil, if you've seen the trailers for Echo, and you've seen Daredevil in it, that's as much Daredevil you see in this show. He appears for less than 3 minutes. He's barely in it. And I'm not really sure why they included Daredevil in this. Like, he didn't serve any important plot purpose or anything like that. He just was kind of there to be there. And he did some cool stunts, but that's really about all he did. So if you went into this expecting a bunch of Daredevil fight sequences, that's not really what you get in this show. Other thing here is that I can notice while watching this show that there were very big lapses in logics and cheats. Like, of course, the big obvious one, at the end of Hawkeye, Echo, of course, shoots Kingpin in the face. And in this show, it's revealed, oh no, he got shot in the eye, but he didn't die. Like, there's something, and I went, wait a minute, something's a little bit off there. That was the obvious logic problem here. But even a bunch of scenes and sequences, I don't see the logic of why they would happen. There are some cheats and plot points. And the biggest problem with this show to me is that there was so much setup for very little payoff at the end. It sets up this entire family bloodline running hundreds of years. And it has such little and quite lackluster payoff by the end of it. Much like a bunch of these other Disney Plus shows, this is another one that feels rushed, and maybe even more rushed because it's only 5 episodes. And I just simply don't get why Disney keeps putting out shows that are this short. They don't have time to be developed or anything like that. And so, I don't know. And that goes for the same for this show, is that it has so much setup, and this one I really felt the setup, and the payoff felt really rushed and lackluster. And you get into a point in time where the characters gain like superpowers, and that's not what I really wanted from this show. I wanted it to stay sort of street level in the crime underworld, and I didn't want it to go full on superpowers, but it did go full on superpowers, and so there was so much set about the family bloodline and having powers, and Echo doesn't actually use her actual superpowers until like the last 5 minutes of the entire show. And even so, it's kind of like cheesy at the end, where you get her, and I don't want to spoil too much of it, but then you get a set of characters that you don't really care about, and it's kind of silly to see them use superpowers. and so it gets kind of cheesy by the end with the whole family thing. And so, as for me, there's a bunch of stuff to enjoy here, but I think this is a deeply, deeply flawed show, and so I don't think I really liked this show. It was a nice turn for the MCU to go more mature, but overall, if you're a big diehard MCU fan, sure, go check this out. But if you're just a casual TV watcher, I would say there's not really any reason to check this show out. And it just felt kind of dull in general because of our lead character and things like that. So, there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Echo. Down below in the comment section, share what you thought of Echo over on my channel. I have more content like this. Check those out right now. Click that like button and be sure to subscribe because it really does help. Thank you guys so much for sticking around to the end, and I will see you in the next one.